There are 2,135 auctions happening this week. That's about 3 times higher than last week's numbers. New South Wales will hold about 790 auctions with 614 in Sydney. Victoria will hold about 660 auctions with most of them in Melbourne. Queensland will hold 366 auctions with about half of them in Brisbane. South Australia will hold about 180 auctions with virtually all of them in Adelaide. Western Australia, Tasmania and the Northern Territory will hold about 18 auctions between them, and the ACT will hold 128 auctions. Taking a look at the most viewed properties going to auction this weekend, and in New South Wales, it's a townhouse in Parramatta at 811 Tennyson Street. This 3-bedder has 2 bathrooms, parking for 1 vehicle. Price guide is $720,000. Victoria, the top property is 22A St Helens Road, Hawthorn East. This Art Deco 2-bedder has high ceilings, steel-framed windows and a large hallway. It's surrounded by a garden with mature trees. Price guide is $1.1 million. The top property in Queensland is a giant 6-bedder located at 12 Flinders Drive, Traveston. That's roughly halfway between Noosa and Gympie. The 2-level home sits on 4 hectares and includes about 300 square metres of internal space. Top property in South Australia is 37 Roselle's Avenue, Colonel Light Gardens. That's in Adelaide's southern suburbs. This home has fallen into disrepair, lying untended for decades. At a minimum, this 5-bedder needs to be seriously spruced up. There are no photos inside the house, which is a bit of a red flag. And the top property in Western Australia is 6 Wallamai Street, Spearwood, which is just south of Fremantle. This 4-bedder was built in 2019 and it has 2 bathrooms, parking spots and a pool. And the most viewed property on the REA Group website this week is a giant 5-bedder in the Melbourne Bayside suburb of Brighton. The address is 6 Kent Road. This home contains high ceilings, custom-made bronze doors, a Venetian staircase, walk-in 800-bottle wine cellar, and a showpiece kitchen with a 6-metre-long island bench. It's also got 5 bathrooms and a large 5-car garage for your supercars, which also includes a fast charger for electric vehicles. There's an elevator in the house, and the bottom level is being described in the ad as either a games room or a nightclub, fitted with Versace wallpaper and a home theatre system. There's also a pool in the backyard, landscape gardens, and a giant master bedroom suite with a huge bathroom and massive walk-in robes. The agents are currently taking expressions of interest for this one. And for more on the property market, I caught up with Paul Ryan from REA Group just a little bit earlier.
It's looking like a huge weekend. More than 2,000 auctions this weekend across Australia. That's up 38% on last year. And in fact, this is more auctions this weekend than we've ever had on record.
Going back the past few months, how have clearance rates been holding up across the country?
So we haven't had many auctions throughout January. That's pretty normal. But auction clearance rates have held above 50% across the country. And that's pretty solid for that time of year. And we ended the year at a pretty strong level as well. So all eyes will really be on what happens as transactions ramp up this week. And really all the way through to Easter, there's likely to be a huge number of transactions.
Yeah, how much stock is starting to come back onto the market now after that Christmas break?
We're seeing things pick up quite solidly. We're expecting a big compression of sales before Easter because it is early this year. So we're expecting over the next 2 months quite a lot of listings and quite a lot of transactions.
Yeah, so is there a lot of interest right now on the website from potential buyers?
Yeah, I think we still see a lot of potential buyers on realestate.com.au. It was really kind of solid demand conditions. That's really what we saw throughout 2023. We were really surprised by how strong demand has been, and that looks to be persisting into 2024.
Okay, looking at this week, some big economic news. Inflation looks like it's peaked it has peaked in Australia, but interest rates may have peaked as well. So what does that really mean for the property market? Is that going to give the market a bit of a boost?
I think that's something we'll look to towards the second half of this year. I think buyers and potential upgraders will be looking at that interest rate and that inflation read and thinking that actually there might be some easing on the way. That I think will definitely be a boost for the market. It'll just depend on when that comes and how quickly the Reserve Bank starts to cut.
All right, this week you also released your latest property report for January. You did mention there weren't many auctions in January, but how did property prices track over the first month of the year?
Property prices were pretty flat over January. Capital Cities were flat. Regional Australia was up a touch, but it was really Perth was the standout. It continued its really remarkable run of growth, up 0.5% in January. So again, as transactions come on in February, we'll be looking to see how that affects price growth.
Yeah, just talk to us about Perth. I know there aren't a lot of auctions coming out of Perth, but are most of the sales done by private treaty?
Yeah, so increasingly there's more auctions because there's been so much demand in Perth. But yeah, it's a traditional private treaty market. And really, anything that comes on the market there gets snapped up really quickly. We've heard lots of anecdotes of East Coast investors piling into Perth. So that's one of the things that's driving some of the price growth there.
What are you expecting for price growth for the rest of this year across Australia?
So we're expecting price growth this year, but more moderate over 2024 than we saw in 2023. The big concern there is affordability. We've seen this huge run up in price growth since the pandemic, and that's likely to weigh on further price growth. Of course, the tailwind there will be lower interest rates. If that eases affordability burdens, then that could mean that prices grow more than we expect.
I think Commonwealth Bank are tipping about 6 rate cuts over the next until 2025. They're looking for the cash rate to go down to 2.85%. So if rates do fall that much in a year and a half, will that really give the market a big boost? People obviously be able to borrow more money again.
Yeah, I mean, the big story that we saw over 2022 and 2023 was borrowing capacity reduced by 1/3 for all buyers. If that starts to reverse, I think that really changes buyer sentiment quite strongly, and it brings more buyers into the market, more people that are kind of can't afford property at current prices. If that borrowing capacity changes, that could push more people into a position where they can get in.
All right, we've talked about price growth. What about the rental market this year? What are you tipping?
So January is a traditionally really strong market for rentals. Lots of leases turnover in January. Students starting university, for instance. It's really tough conditions out there for renters. We see rents grew really strongly over 2023. Nationally, advertised rents were up $60 a week. We see that the total number of rental listings on realestate.com.au is at pretty much a record low. So it's going to be continued tough conditions for renters, at least for the first half of 2024. We've seen some easing in demand, and we've seen more investors come into the market in response to that really high rent growth. So we're hoping that we'll see a bit of an easing in rental market conditions towards the second half of the year.
And the population of Australia keeps growing, but it looks like with the inflation numbers we saw this week, there's quite a few costs that are starting to be reduced for the construction sector. So is that a bit of a rosier outlook for construction and the development and building of new houses?
That's what we're hoping. The long-term solution to these, this shortage of housing that we have across Australia is to build more homes. And one of the big constraints has been high and really variable costs for constructing homes. So people don't want to enter into, year-long contracts where they're unsure what it's going to cost them. That's starting to ease. So the uncertainty is starting to ease, price pressures are starting to ease, and hopefully that means that we can ramp up the construction sector and really get homes built.
Fantastic. Paul Ryan, thanks for coming on the program as always.
Thank you very much.